Welcome to the Joy of Being You podcast. I'm Ava Nagy, a positive psychology coach. I created this space for real conversations about resilience and transformation to inspire you on your journey. In each episode, I sit down with women who have faced life's toughest challenges and came out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more aligned with themselves. Their stories aren't just inspiring, they are proof that change is possible no matter where you are on your path. So if you're looking for honest, heartfelt stories and insights to help you move forward, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. Today, I'm honored to introduce my guest, Lisa Gerardy, a writer, educator, and survivor with a gift for transforming hardship into powerful narrative. In her memoir, Chasing Normal, Finding Love After Surviving Physical and Emotional Abuse, Lisa shares her journey through a traumatic childhood and winding path she took towards self-acceptance and love. Her story is one of resilience, healing, and finding the strength to create a new path forward. I am so grateful to have her here today, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. Let's begin. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for your courage. Since this is the first,
thank you for having me.
This is the first podcast. I'm honored to have you as a guest. Could you share a little bit about your background and the challenges you had in the past?
Sure. So I was raised as an only child. I did have a brother by my mother. She gave up custody of my brother, so it was just her and me. She didn't start abusing me until later, but we had to go live with her mother for a little bit when I was 2, and that was the first time I was sexually abused, and it was by a step uncle. So then after that, she became physically and emotionally abusive throughout my life. So it was just a lot of anxiety. I felt anxious a lot. But at the same time, I think the thing that helped me to become a different person as I grew up was, even as a child, even as like a 6-year-old, I would look at her, throwing up things and think, she looks ridiculous. Why would anyone do that? That's ridiculous. So I think, just watching all that. I watched her be abused by her boyfriend as well. She never did press charges or anything.
So you thought that was kind of normal, that people could do whatever they wanted, but there was no consequences to it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that one of the things that you took away from that?
Sure. But I also took away from the fact that my mother didn't make the right choices. Like, she really did not make great choices. I think that was because she was also abused as a kid by her mother. My mother's teeth all in front were crowns because her mother rubbed her teeth with Comet cleanser at one point because she complained about their toothpaste. So yeah, so it's a line that I hope I have broken. Where you'd have to interview my son to find out for sure. But so I think she had no self-esteem. So her choice of a boyfriend was an abusive, alcoholic, married man. When she was a cute little woman, she worked among doctors and lawyers and all kinds of people. She could have chosen better, but I think with her own background, her choices were incorrect, in my opinion. And so I did, choose some wrong people too along the way. I wasn't perfect, but I think just seeing how that could play out, I guess, made me want to do different things.
Yeah, I read part of your book, and what really stood out for me is that you didn't have any emotional support. You didn't have any like balance and security and safety. Those were the things that really stood out for me. How did you go through that as a child, and how do you think that it affected you later in your life?
Well, I had Fran, who was a neighbor, and she babysat me, and she's sort of like an aunt figure to me, aunt figure, not aunt. And she was supportive, but she would never like really stand up to my mom. Nobody wanted to stand up to Janet. She was scary. I became a loner from the time I was 8. I was a latchkey kid, and I was fine with it. I felt safe when I was alone. And I still, to this day, feel most comfortable, like most comfortable when I am alone. I'm also comfortable with my husband and my son. Like that to me is like being alone, but that's about it. Like anybody else is kind of like on guard a little bit.
Hmm.
So it's made me like really independent and an introvert, I guess.
Yeah. So do you feel that it is still affecting your life?
Mhm.
I've had my own personal experiences. That's why I find sharing this message so important. And I know that I'm still working on some parts of the past. There are different patterns that you develop, like what you just said. You don't have this feeling of safety. You have safety with certain people, which you mentioned that it's your husband and your son, but it's really hard to let the other part of the world in. It's almost like there's like less tolerance for things that could happen in relationships. Do you
Mhm.
still feel that it's affecting your life?
Oh, sure. I feel like I'm still kind of that people pleaser that I had to become as a child.
Mhm.
Um, I I have humor. Humor is what I use, sort of as a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
So I do find myself like in a group setting, like book club or something like that, making jokes constantly.
Mhm.
People laugh, but I imagine I'm probably a little annoying too because I'm just always trying to make people laugh, make people happy.
Yes, yes, yes. Just to kind of, that's probably gave you the certainty in your life that if you're funny, if you're uplifting, then
Mhm,
maybe you're gonna have more safety and more security and more love and more acceptance and more support.
mhm.
Yeah, so you went through your childhood, you had a lot of emotional, physical, sexual trauma. What were the consequences, and what was your point of change? Because right now you said, and this is what your memoir is about too, that you are in a healthy relationship and you are on
Mhm,
the other side. So
mhm.
I would like to ask you a little bit about this time in between. So after what happened, was the point when you said, okay, this is it. I need to shift or something needs to change.
Okay, so I did date people that I shouldn't have dated. Not that they were all bad. It's just either I didn't know what a good relationship looked like. So either I would be verbally abusive to them, or like with my first husband, I cheated on him, but he was also physically violent with me.
Mhm.
So it was always up and down. I think the big change came a few months after I met my current husband. I met him at speed dating, but then
Mhm.
we didn't exchange information right then. So I started dating this other guy who was the father of one of the students in my class. I taught at a Montessori school at the time, and he was an alcoholic. I stayed with him for 3 months. He
Mhm.
was not violent, but he did drive drunk with his daughter in the car, which, was kind of the last step for me. But the final thing that told me, Lisa, you don't have to choose men that you need to fix is that man gave me herpes. He gave me a disease that will
Mm.
never go away. And that's when I thought I need to protect myself more and I need to choose men that are kind, if I'm going to date again, which at that point I didn't think I'd ever date again because I had this disease. But yeah, that was I guess the big downfall where I was like, I really need to choose better.
So what you were saying is that you learned from the relationships and experiences you had that you do need to choose better. So it sounds like that you put the power back into your hands.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it also sounds like you knew you deserved it. Even when you were talking about your childhood, as you were saying that you were just looking at your mom and it didn't make sense the way that she
Hmm.
behaved. That tells me, and please correct me if it's not right, you didn't take it personal. You didn't think that this was
Hmm.
your fault. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of times when people go through something like this, they take it personal. They think that this is their fault, even though you adapted to the situation
Hmm.
by trying to be funny, pleasing people, and making them happy. So you still had a way to adapt to the situation. I know that you told me when we had a conversation that you sometimes do comedy. So it kind of turned into something positive for you too, which is
Yeah.
awesome. But when I feel that you did take that power back and you said, this is my choice. I can make better decisions for myself. I can make better decisions to protect myself.
Mhm.
How did that happen? Was it easy for you? Did you struggle? What happened in that moment of shift? And what happened after?
I just decided that I didn't need a man at all. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was focused on my son. My son was 7 at that time.
Hmm.
So I was focused on him. When I went to speed dating and met Chris, back up a little bit, one of the things we figured out was that someone who worked with him, also her son went to my school. So we
Hmm.
had that connection. So she, from the first day of school, we met in July. So from the first day of school, she said, Chris wants to see you again. And I said, well, I'm dating Brian. And so she kept up with that after I broke up with Brian. She's like, well, Chris wants to see you. I'm like, fine, I'll meet him for lunch. So I met him for lunch, and it was Martin Luther King Day. So it's 20 years ago this Monday.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
Perfect timing. I love
yeah.
it.
So after our third day is when he kissed me. I wrote him an email. Cause I'm a coward. I don't like to say things on the phone. I wrote him an email and explained that I had this disease and I totally understand if he wants to walk away. And he didn't. He did
Mhm.
not walk away, which I was really amazed because he's a prince. He really
Mhm.
is.
So you made the decision, but you also, what I hear, you were absolutely transparent and true to yourself, and you didn't hold back and you put yourself out the way you are. You said that I don't need a man, but if I do, I want to have the person that I can trust. What did that feel like?
It was scary at first. I thought, he was going to say, well, see you later.
Yeah, it's very
But he
vulnerable.
didn't. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he didn't. And, we dated some more and we ended up buying the house I was renting together. I think it was 5 months after our first date. So you would think, it would have been a disaster moving very quickly like that. We got married 5 months after that. So within 10 months of our first date, we were married. And I'm sure people either thought I was pregnant or we were crazy and this was never going to work, but it's somehow magically worked, I guess, just because we're both so honest and we're both kind of sarcastic. Um, the first conversation we had at speed dating, he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a teacher and I do stand up comedy. And he said, at the same time. And I said, usually, yes. So, so we get
Yes.
each other, I guess. So, yeah.
It's so wonderful to hear, you had such a hard past. It's just amazing. And I love hearing that as soon as you made the decision, you owned yourself, you were true to
Mhm.
yourself, and you were authentic, even when you had to be vulnerable. You literally just made that decision and then you got what you wanted. So that's
Oh,
just, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's just so amazing. And I really want the listeners to pay attention to this because I think that there's a message here. Um, because a lot of times when we go through trauma, we adapt to the situation, we become somebody else. We actually start abandoning ourselves and we keep
Mhm.
getting into situations where we feel abandoned, neglected, hurt, and abused.
Mhm.
And what I've learned in my own life too, that the answer to this is being authentic and being who we are and owning that and stepping into that person and start living our lives that way. And then everything will fall into place. Whatever we're supposed to receive, we will receive. And you have this wonderful marriage and relationship and family after all you have gone through. So it is possible. It is possible for other people to also achieve this. Do you remember any other challenges, doubts, anything that you were going through that time? I want to
Oh,
ask this question just to get people ready for the things that they could be facing.
well, I think at first I felt like I didn't deserve Chris,
Mm,
because he's so nice and normal. He comes from a normal family where, as we know, there's no normal, but normal family where his parents were married his whole life. He went to church every Sunday. Nobody was getting beaten or raped, that kind of
mhm,
thing. But
mhm.
so at first I felt like, well, I don't deserve to be here. And meeting his parents the first time, I felt like these people are going to hate me, but they didn't. They did not. They liked me. It was weird. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting his mom to say something like, "You're a single mom, you're trash, get away from my son." But she didn't. She hugged me and said, "You make Christopher very happy." And it was just really odd.
That's wonderful.
Wasn't
That's
expecting that.
wonderful. So the grace and the love and the kindness that you received from people gave you space to heal. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
If you didn't get that, would you have stayed? What do you think?
I think I would have stayed as long as Chris wasn't
Mm-hmm.
abusive or disrespectful to me. That was my main concern, is how he treated me and my son.
Yeah.
And he treated my son well. When we first started dating, I stayed home sick with my son, and Chris stopped by on the way home to bring Sprite for my son. I said, "Come out here and say hi to Chris." And my son, he's 7, he comes out and he vomits right on the floor. So I said, "Oh, excuse me." And I took him in the bathroom to change him. When I came out, Chris was cleaning up the vomit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was like, wow.
So he was all in. Yeah.
Yep.
That's wonderful. And that's also one of the signs where you can see that somebody is truly investing. People go through a hard time in their past, don't have people showing up for them. A lot of times they choose people, as you did as well, that are not showing up. So the difference is recognizing who is there for you, who is showing up, investing their time and their presence and making things work. What is the most valuable lesson you learned during this period of change?
That I can catch a sexually transmitted disease. For some reason, I thought that I was immune from that. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking, but I never thought that would happen. Um, that anybody would be that dishonest as that man was. He did not tell me this. So that was a lesson to me that I do need to protect myself and that people lie. I'm always, I would say, overly honest with people. I'm the queen of TMI. So it took me a while to figure out that people lie. I know that was very naive of me, and that I can catch things. So I'm not immune.
Yeah. What was the valuable lesson with the lesson you learned? Yes, you do need to protect yourself, but after as you were going through these changes, what was the lesson for you there?
A lesson for me was if I protect myself, life is better, maybe.
Yeah, protecting or taking care of yourself, or say that whatever happens to you, it matters, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else you feel that would be valuable for the listeners who might go through the same experience to hear right now?
That you can get out of that experience. You don't have to continue the path. You don't have to accept abuse into your life. You can actually there's a lot of places where you can get help. I didn't go to any place in particular. I mean, I do take medication for anxiety now, but because that sort of sticks with you, the whole whenever there's a door slamming or something,
Yeah.
I shake. But that you can get out of it. Like it's not necessarily the rest of your life.
Besides a romantic relationship, did any other parts of your life change?
Yeah, definitely.
If you look at other relationships, your work relationships, what has changed?
Well, I felt more confident. So at that time, right around the time we got married, I started working online for an online university. And I learned that I'm an introvert and I don't particularly enjoy being around children. So teaching in a school was not good for me. It gave me a lot of stress. So that confidence and feeling like I was doing the right thing, I ended up being the department chair for a while. I ended up in leadership roles. So it put me into a career path that enabled me to write more too, because I've always loved writing. From the time I was little, I would just sit and write on a little legal pad, just make up stuff, stories. So yeah, it's like my whole life changed, really. Like
Mm.
I went from being this single mom, comedian person with a job she hated to having a fulfilling life. And I think also giving my son a much better life. He's had the privilege of seeing a healthy relationship,
Mhm.
and he himself is engaged now to his girlfriend of 11 years. They've been together 11 years. Yeah, from high school on. They're high school sweethearts.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. What you're saying is that healing give an opportunity to your son to experience a healthy relationship so he can actually have a healthy relationship. That's important to voice that when a domestic abuse happens, every single part of the family is being affected. It's just so wonderful to hear that you making the decision that I matter created space to that and then from that point on there's
Mhm,
this completely different life opened up for you.
mhm.
How does this feel now when you look back?
I feel a lot of gratitude every day that I'm in this good relationship, good marriage, comfortable living arrangements, everything like that. I look back and I just feel grateful that I'm not there anymore.
Mhm.
Not only the abuse, but the poverty growing up with just a single mom. Actually, this is like 10 years ago. I took my son down to Hollywood, Florida, where I'm from, and I took him on a little tour of all the little rental apartments we lived in. We tended to move every year. Like if the rent would raise, we moved.
Oh,
I
yeah.
took him around because he could not believe that he doesn't remember being super young when when I didn't have much money or anything, but he saw these places I lived and he was like, "Really? You lived here?" I'm like, uh-huh. He
Wow.
goes, "There are bars on the windows." I'm like, "Yes, there are. Indeed, there are." So, yeah, he just thought I was always this preppy person you that he sees before him. But yeah, no, I feel very grateful. A little bit sad because I'm an empty nester now, and he lives in Florida, and I live here in Phoenix. So,
Mhm.
but we do have things like this, like we do video calls and things like that, and we text all the time.
So you're
So
close to each other. Yeah, looking back at your past, what do you feel? Does it give you anxiety or
it's yeah,
could you make peace with it?
I have made peace with it. I think I've made peace with my mother. She's passed away, but I made peace with that. I think I used to think like, oh, I should have, even though I was being abused, I should have been smarter, better. I should have done better at school. I could have done this, but now I feel like everything that happens has brought me here, and I
Mhm.
like being here. So
Mhm.
I'm good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a question. If you don't feel comfortable, obviously answering, please don't.
Okay.
Were you able to have a conversation with your mom about the past before she passed away?
About her being abusive, she always denied it.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time when I was leaving my first husband, she and my stepfather came over and to tell me what an idiot I was, I guess. And I said, "Well, what did you expect after my crappy childhood?" And she said, "You had a crappy childhood?" And I said, "Were you not there?"
Mhm.
She just, yeah,
So,
denial.
yeah, so how does that make you feel? Because a lot of times people who go through abuse experience this as well. People who were abusive pretend like
Mhm,
nothing happened um and it almost like it's hard to own your own story when you don't have the validations. How did
mhm,
you get through that? You didn't get the validation. How did
mhm,
you move forward? Because a lot of people get stuck there, including myself. I was stuck there for a long time, and
mhm.
it's hard to move forward. What helped you?
Well, I guess what helped me at first, I sort of divided my mom in my head into two people because as I got older after she married John, she was a calmer person. So she was different for the most part. So at first I divided her, but then I think what really was the validation, the turning point for me was I visited my aunt Fran's brother Bobby, Uncle Bobby. I visited him in the hospital when he was dying of AIDS, basically, and I just wanted to see him. I knew I had to see him before he died, and I was sitting there talking to him, and he said, "Yeah, your mom was really, really hard on you." And he is the only grown up in my life who ever said that. Anybody else was like, "Oh, your mom's stressed. Your mom, oh, your poor mom working so hard." But he was like, "Yeah, she was
This is
really,
real.
really,
This is real.
yeah."
Like, your story is real. You
Uh-huh.
didn't make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as I started writing this memoir and posting bits of it online, some of my Facebook friends from high school are like, "Yeah, I remember. I remember that. I remember being afraid of your mom."
Well, I'm glad that you got that validation because I do think it's important. And a lot of times people don't get it. Even if you didn't get it from your mom, that there was at least one adult around you who
Mhm.
saw what you were going through and was willing to recognize your story. If some people are going through this experience and they don't get their own story validated, I believe that we have the power to validate our own story. Living life from that moment of truth is really important because that's the only way that you can become authentic
Mhm.
and say that, okay, I deserve better. At the end of the podcast, I want to ask a couple of questions. And the question is, what advice would you give to your past self who was struggling?
I could actually tell my younger self to focus, like put my focus on school and to not worry about getting acceptance from boys because I was too worried about boys liking me. And that's what I would say, other than invest in Apple computers. But, I was probably too young to do that.
I love that. Your humor just
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah. Yeah. They were new. Nobody thought they were going anywhere. We had them in school. They were like, these are, yeah. And like, for the love of God, Lisa, invest in Apple.
Invest in Apple and invest in yourself.
Exactly.
Pay attention to school and study, not the boys.
Yeah.
But I understand that you needed the validation. You needed to get
Mhm.
attention, the loves from somewhere. So I am not surprised to hear that that's how you were
Mhm.
trying to get it. What is the biggest lesson you learned throughout your journey?
Who you include in your life matters, and that you can choose who you include in your life.
Oh, I love that. So, who you include and who surrounds you in your life matters, and you have the power to choose the people. I love that. What advice would you give to someone who is going through similar challenges? Maybe they are in an abusive relationship or they are stuck in the past. What would you tell them?
Say, if you can, see a therapist, because that did help back in the day. I don't currently see a therapist. I just write everything out instead. And also, don't be afraid of medication, even if it's just short term. If you're stuck inside your head in this depression and anxiety, medication can help you see clearly so you can make changes on your own rather than just being stuck.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would recommend them? Something that maybe if somebody doesn't have, they don't have the
Resources.
financial means to be able to
Mhm.
get a therapist. What else do you think that they could do?
Reach out to friends. You'd be surprised what friends would help you out of the situation. Maybe offer you a place to stay. And there's also all sorts of shelters and things. There is help out there, and you just
Hmm.
have to speak. You know, don't
Yeah.
assume, oh, nobody's going to help me, because I think we kind of do that. Like, oh, it won't matter. Nobody will help me.
Yeah, I think if people are not getting support when they are young, but they almost feel like they don't even deserve it. It's really, really hard
Mhm.
to reach out for support. Your messages, anyone who is going through these challenges, seek help. If a
Mhm.
professional, friends, relatives, or anyone who can be there for you, and know that you deserve to get the support and you deserve to have a better life.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for sharing your story so authentically today. Lisa, I really, really appreciate you. And I want to make sure that the people can find you online. You have your book, your memoir on Amazon. Is that the only place that they can find your book?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's out there on different sites. And my webpage, lisagerardywriter.com. I also have lisagerardy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can people reach out to you?
They can email me from the website if they'd like to.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you for everyone who tuned in with us today. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and share with anyone who might be interested, who is going through a hard time, to get support so they can live the life they desire because they deserve it. Thank you again.
Thank you.